to our human rights causes. We provide online short courses to human rights defenders and various actors with an intention to equip them or capitalize the knowledge that they have in the areas of human rights. We aim to ensure human rights defenders and various actors understand and apply skills and the knowledge about the various human rights mechanisms that exist at national, regional and international level. So the trainings generally aims to empower them on the best way they can implement and coordinate their human rights work while monitoring and protecting human rights at regional, national and international level. The overall objective of the training on national and regional and international human rights mechanisms is provide participants with a comprehensive understanding of these rights mechanisms and equip them with the knowledge and skills necessary to effectively engage with this mechanism. It's all known that this mechanism, especially regional and international human rights mechanisms, are not known to all human rights defenders. Therefore, the online short course on human rights mechanisms will cut across 8 units. That is, first of all, the introduction to human rights, where we are going to discuss about the nature, origin, and other concepts and principles of human rights. And the second unit is about United Nations human rights mechanisms. This unit focuses on the United Nations human rights systems and its relevance to human rights defenders and various actors. Participants will learn about the various United Nations treaty bodies and their monitoring functions. They will also have an opportunity to also be able to know how to access these mechanisms. The third unit is about regional and sub-regional human rights mechanisms. The special focus will be on Africa and sub-regional human rights mechanisms such as the African Union and the East African Community and other regional human rights mechanisms. Unit 4 will also focus on national human rights system. This is specifically about our human rights mechanism in Tanzania, and those students who are participants will be coming from other countries will also have an opportunity to have an idea about the national human rights mechanisms. The Unit 5 will have some time to discuss about the implementation now of this regional and the international human rights mechanism and standards at national level. Then Unit 6 will look at how we can strengthen our advocacy and engagement at various levels of human rights at national, regional, and international level. Unit 7 will look at case studies and practical exercises, especially analyzing specific human rights cases and issues. Participants will deepen their understanding and applying these principles, for example, how to draft documents and various special mechanisms on how to access them, and how it may quickly support their work of human rights promotion and protection at all levels. And then the last unit will be about providing knowledge on how to monitor and document human rights violations at all levels. Dear participants, therefore, my unit specifically today is about introduction to human rights, where we are specifically going to discuss about the general concept, the history, the nature of human rights, and the sources, and how this human right evolved over time, starting from the ancient time, before Christ, the Middle Ages, and now the contemporary society. This is how we are going to learn about human rights, and I would like, of course, all the participants today to understand clearly the concept of human rights before we go to those mechanisms that we are currently using at international, regional, and national level. The idea of having this topic before this unit, before other units, actually is to empower human rights defenders and participants in this group to, first of all, conceptualize the idea of human rights, because there are a lot of confusions about the concept of right itself and also the concept of human rights. So at the end of the day, participants will understand key historical legal and moral influences of human rights, philosophical perceptions, philosophical approaches in understanding the concept of right itself, and then the general concept of human right. We'll be able to understand and differentiate between legal rights, moral rights, and human rights in general. Therefore, the most question that most of us will be asking ourselves is, what is right? And it's very key, it's very important for, first of all, before you discuss about human rights, to understand the concept of right. Actually, various scholars and various writings are trying to tell or to write about the concept of right in different approaches. First of all, we should understand that the general idea about right is about the general condition of life. That because we are human beings, there is a certain general condition of life that bring us together and how we can perform life together. That is right. Therefore, general, in simple words, rights, these are just claims that we have as human beings, just within our social settings. These are conditions of social life that we need to live and depend on them. Any entitlement, for instance, that a human being has within the locality, a certain justified claim that because I'm a human being, for instance, I need 1 or 3. Yeah, because I live in a certain society, for instance, I live in Africa, maybe I need 1 or 3. Or because there are laws and principles that have been developed, then I'm supposed to go or to get this or not to be treated like this. That's what we call right. Therefore, rights are legal, can be social, can be moral principles of freedom or entitlement. That is, right are fundamental normative rules about what is allowed of people or owed to people according to some legal or social conventions that some has been so far propounded by various writers and philosophers. So the general idea about right is about our entitlement. In Swahili we call it stahiki. It's something that we need or deserve to. Now this is something that we deserve to, or this sort of entitlement, how is it deserved to, can now be categorized into 3 groups. Yes, we have, these are our entitlements or our claims, but these claims or these rights can be now categorized into main 3 categories of rights. This is natural right, moral right, and legal right. So it's better to get this idea clearly, because it might answer some of the questions that are quite confusing at some point when it comes to the notion and the concept of human right. Now, natural right. Natural right, we mean those rights which were enjoyed by the people just because we are human beings. It has something to relate to the nature. The rights were enjoyed by people because of the nature. Faith in natural right is strongly explained by several scholars that we hold this natural right because these are inherent in several rights from the nature. And to me and other scholars now, natural right is equally to human right, because when we come later on to discuss about human right, you will see some general concept and idea that human rights are attached to God. Human rights are attached to nature. Therefore, the concept of natural right is all about being us. It's about our dignity. It's about human being and the nature itself. That whatever that is provided by nature, that is natural right. And it's also related to natural law. So natural right is all about human right in some other instances. So it's better to get the clear picture when we talk about a natural right, that anything attached to the nature is a natural right, and it's also about natural law. It's also about human right. Now, moral right. This is another kind of or category of right, but this one depends on ethical feelings of a man and its surroundings and its society. The ethical or moral rights is all about our cultures and tradition. Moral rights are those rights which are based on human consciousness. They are backed by moral force and human kind. These are based on human sense of goodness and justice. So what is good in a society, or what is perceived in bad in a society, that is moral right. We are living in a community where, of course, for instance, it is prohibited to walk without clothes. That is morality, that it is immoral for someone to stand up and walk nakedly. It is against the culture for for young people, children, I mean, to sit on a chair while an adult person is standing nearby or beside. So this is against the morals and ethics within our community. These are the rights that cannot even be enforced under the force of law. They don't have any force of law. They cannot be enforced in the court of law. But in one way or another, the moral rights, I would really say these are the rights that are also trying to create a certain kind of social cohesion, a certain kind of how human beings can relate to each other. Yes, we have the natural right, which is actually, according to various writings and historical development, this is what we had even before the creation of our nation, say whatever. Now, moral rights are there just because human beings started to live together. By the time we started living as communities, we started to living together as nations, we created rights, morals, that we are supposed to do this, we're not supposed to do this. But during ancient time, at the time when we had no families, we had no community, I think it's not easy to talk about the moral. Because morals are something that are ethical values that are created because of a certain kind of gatherings or community that we are living together today in Tanzania. We have our morals and ethics. Those who are living in Arabs, they have their morals and ethics. Those who are living in Europe, they have their morals and ethics that are sometimes most attached to the nature they've been growing up with, and also attaching to other things like religions and beliefs. So legal rights now, the third category of right. This is what we call it man-made rights. It's because we have developed laws and policies in place. We have laws and policies in place that today we are allowed to go to school, and you are supposed to go to a holiday. When you are employed, you are supposed to be paid salary. You are supposed to go to an holiday. These are man-made laws, the policies and laws that create a certain kind of right. Actually, during Adam and Eve, if by that time actually there were no employment, there were no schools, of course, during those times, even legal rights were not there because no any policy or law was in place by that time. But natural law, the human right, actually existed by the time when Adam and Eve, for those who believe in that, actually were created. That's the time the human being started enjoying right. And with this right we call natural right, human right, because they are just attached to nature, they are just attached to human being. Of course, other philosophers like John Locke and others, they say human rights are attached to God. That's why there's no any way I can say that these were created by the law, were created by certain morality or by a certain kind of traditions and customs. No, it is because we are born as human rights. Now I think we are in a better position to differentiate between natural law, which on the other end we call it human right, legal rights, and moral rights. That moral right and legal rights actually they came after the realization of human rights. That a human being is born first. A human being is created by God first. Then later on, when we come together as family, when we come together as society, we create moral rights. And when we come together as nations, as community, we develop laws and policies, then we have legal rights. Therefore, by whatever means, human rights are universal. Moral rights are not universal. Legal rights are not universal, because what is applicable here in Tanzania today, for instance, the laws of Tanzania may accept some few of the practices, but laws in Europe may not accept some of the practices. It's very common like that. Some morality won't go to religion, for example, because moral rights are attached to religion. That some other religions allows people to marry more than one wife, some other do not allow that. This is because of their cultures and tradition. These are moral rights and cannot be universal. But human rights, because I have a right to live, I have a right to liberty. Wherever I go, that is my right and cannot be actually taken away by whatever means, because human rights are there just protect my dignity as a human being. To protect me, because in me there is that sense of God, according to various philosophers. This is the clear definition, of course, the clear concept, the clear distinction between legal rights, human rights, and moral rights. Now, let's dwell on what is human right now, because this is our main substance today. Now, human right, as I said, those are the rights that we have because we are human beings. Just by being born as a human being, automatically you acquire those rights. This is very clear and there's no objection on that. Those who have that perception that human rights, these are Western culture, that have been imported from whites or developing countries, actually they are wrongly interpreting the concept of human right. Human right is all about our life. There's nothing else there's nothing to do, human right concept or definition or interpretation has nothing to do with developed nations, has nothing to do with associated with any part of the world. Actually, it's because we are human beings. Then we have to enjoy these rights as what the natural law and natural rights provides. So every person has dignity and value. And human right now is here to protect that dignity and value that we have. And actually you can see how human right has shaped the world, has played a very significant role actually to protect the dignity and value of human being. Because before, during the ancient time, Middle Ages and late 18th and 19th century, there were a lot of violations of human rights. Now, therefore, human rights are a set of principles concerned with equality and fairness. Whatever means, you can sense that this is the reason why gradually from ancient time, Middle Ages, and contemporary society, the issue of human rights actually is developing very well, and at the same time, you can sense the way human dignity, the issues of equality and fairness to the world today is very high compared to those times. There are those times where people were treating other people like subjects, where those times when other people were treating other people as slaves, but because of the principles of human rights, because of realization of human rights, today we no longer have slave trades. Today we no longer have political colonization, so we still have economic such kind of neocolonialism. Today we have some sort of fairness, equality. Though in some other part of the world, still the issue of equality or fairness is not there. But at least globally, we see that because of human rights, the humankind today we are treating each other fairly. The humankind today we are treating each other equally. We value the dignity and the human being within ourselves. We respect what God made us to be. It is because of human rights. Therefore, I really want to go contrary to those and actually to let them understand that those who have some perceptions and understanding about human rights as Western culture, please, after this kind of presentation, please change your mind and join with us to understand that human rights are there because we are human beings and nothing else has to do with Western culture or whatever sort of imported ideas. Now, because of this origin and nature of human right, we now say that all states have been now given obligation, as it went over time, to respect and protect those rights. Every human being is entitled to some basic rights without which we cannot live as human beings. These rights that we are today enjoying, some centuries ago, people couldn't enjoy them. The people were sold like properties, where people were treated like subjects. There were a lot of wars between one nation to another, one kingdom to another, and people were treating each other like, butchering each other and without taking care of any value of human being. But because of human rights today, we respect each other. I don't say that we don't see violation of human rights today, but actually we cannot compare to what happened some centuries from 16th century going back. Therefore, human rights is an old ideal, usually to be called as natural right, and now they are called basic rights or fundamental rights. That the global society today, under the UN and other sub-regional mechanisms, human rights are highly protected. At our national level nowadays, we have constitutions and laws that protect human rights. But actually, the idea of human rights today cannot be discussed without tracing the origin the way the global society during ancient time, during those times before even Christ, there are some people who attempted an attempt of protecting and realizing human rights. For example, the great king of Persia, by those time, Cyrus the Great, actually there was something that was written called the clay cylinder. A clay cylinder is a document that by those times they started documenting about certain kind of rights. This is the first document that people believe it was the first chart of human rights under this universe. But having that document as a first chart of human rights does not mean that that's the time rights were actually created. No, rights were there before. But having these documents in place, it was an effort towards the realization and protection of human rights. Later on, other effort to protect and realize and document human rights, it was a Magna Carta in the UK, where King John was forced to actually sign that document. We had also in Africa the Mande Charter and the king of the Mali Empire, by those time King Sundiata. That's another effort that also came about to document and protect human rights. But other efforts later will follow. Maybe I will quickly talk about some other efforts. And actually these efforts to realize and protect human rights were propounded, were actually forced by various philosophers. That's why the question of philosophical approaches when it comes to human rights protection and realization is very key. Leave alone the spread of human rights ideas across the Eastern Europe and later on parts of Africa and whatever, but some philosophical approaches contributed greatly to the development of human rights, especially from the 16th to 19th century. These philosophers had a lot of idea and philosophy, though there are those people who believed that human right, it was there just because there are those who believe that human right, it was for the states. It's only for states, leaders and kings. And actually, you look at history from the Bible and the other religious groups, actually it was only kings in those days that had all the rights. Their citizens were treated like subjects. So when you talk about rights, it's all about king and those in power. There are people who believe that rights are only for those in power. So the way the community were treated, the way the governance, the way the political system in those days actually mistreated human beings. So now various philosophers, those who had like, for instance, like John Locke, like Thomas Hobbes and others, actually came out with an idea that we need to treat human beings with fairness, with dignity, because they have those rights that are clearly connected to God. Human beings need to be happy, the individual rights, that individual being need to be happy and need to be treated fairly. So those philosophies, approaches, philosophical ideas, actually made a lot of people by those times, from 16th to 19th century, to start thinking about their own rights, their own freedoms and liberty. Now the connection about these philosophical approaches, like later on when we come out Marxism ideas and Marx and Lenin, this also came out and strongly and added more value on the realization of human rights. Leave alone those philosophers who had a lot of ideas about utilitarianisms. At some point, they are totally going contrary to what we believe as human rights defenders. But actually many philosophers, as of today, we can actually see the role they played to influence societies in those times, from 16th to 17th century, to start demanding or making their leaders accountable for their rights. That's where we had the French Revolution in 18th centuries. We had American revolutions. We had actually all the efforts across the global society by those times, from 16th, 17th, 18th century, were influenced by these philosophical ideas about human rights. Now this is how human rights evolved, and to the level that the society today enjoy human rights, but it is because of those kind of struggle and approaches and some sort of developments that the global society went. Today we are talking about global society in a manner that people respect our values, people respect human dignity, and people respect the nature we were made as human beings compared to what we had before. So what I would really want to say about human rights evolution or the development of human rights before the Second World War II is that so many efforts were done by various actors, including writers, including religious groups, including philosophers. Some people believe that it is because of philosophical approaches and philosophical efforts that human rights came to full realization, and not because of theologians. So the theologians, the religious group people, were said to be part of those groups that violated rights of people. Until when we had philosophical approaches or interventions, that's where now the issue of human rights realization came into the reality. Now, there are some few concepts that we need to understand about characteristics of human rights. Human rights are human rights, and there's nowhere we can actually, when you have those rights, we are all equal. Those are key principles. We have human rights, we are all equal. These are principles of human rights. We have human rights, we are all equal before the earth. That whether you are white, you are black, you are short, you are rich, you are poor, these are key principles. We are all equal under the sun. Another main key principle about human rights is universality. Human right is very universal, that whenever you are under this globe, you are supposed to enjoy those rights. Whether you are in Japan, in China, in America, in Tanzania, you need to enjoy all these rights. Another principle is about interrelated or interdependence. Human rights are always dependent from each other. There's no point you can say, I want to give you two rights and the other one I'm not going to give you. For instance, the right to food today. If you don't give me food, all other rights will be at risk. Probably I will become very weak and sick, and later on I will die. Therefore, human rights correspond to each other. I will go through these 5 groups of human rights, and you can see how human rights are interrelated or interdependent. For example, the first group of human rights is civil and individual rights. This group of rights talks about right to life, liberty, security of persons, ownership of property, freedom of thought, conscience. These are purely about individual rights. These are the rights that are always there just to ensure a human being is fairly treated. A human being is treated according to his or her dignity. These are individual and civil rights that are related to protection of the right of life of a person. They are essential to a person to start a life, a dignified life. That you cannot live with dignity today if civil individual rights are not protected. Political rights are also at some point connected to your individual right, because it's about freedom of expression, it's about your freedom to associate, it's about your freedom to engage with various governmental intervention, for example, elections and other things. That as a human being, you are supposed also to participate actively in various sections of society, in your country, participation in election and other things. Right, for example, another group of rights is related to rule of law. That we have laws in places, we have our constitution, but we have to treat each other with a certain kind of dignity, level of dignity. That yes, there is a law in place, but you cannot come and arrest me arbitrarily. You need to follow the rule of the procedure. That we have to follow what the law says to conduct a certain kind of an activity. If the constitution says after 5 years you need to do election, then you have to follow that. If the law says that if someone has made a crime, then you are supposed to follow 1, 2, 3 stages to do, then you are supposed to follow. This is all about rule of law. It's also about creating a certain kind of human being whose rights and dignity is respected. Actually, you can see that it's all about capitalizing on dignity of a human being. That as a human being, we should actually live as a civilized society. We should actually live as the way that God wanted us to live in this society. Another set of rights is economic and social rights. These are about standard of living. Economic right, for instance, the right to property, to employment, and whatever. These are, if I go to employment, I need to be paid. It's all about trying to speak about myself as a human being. These are a kind of rights that are also coming out to put more, effort to ensure a certain kind of human being or a certain kind of dignity is actually valued within a human being. Now, with the social rights, such as, for example, access to education, access to health facilities, of course, again, it makes a human being to attain a certain standard of life, a certain kind standard of life with a certain kind of value in it. That's why today you cannot live as a human being without economic and social rights. Even if you have those civil rights, the right to live. Yes, I have a right to live, I can live, but you cannot live without aiming something for your life. You cannot live in a certain decent housing. You cannot make your life, if at all, at the end of the day, when you become sick, you don't go to proper medications. You cannot make a good life, a dignified life, if at all, you cannot go to school and learn and actually try to create an environment for you to be able to become a productive citizen in this global society. Now, the last group of right, this is collective right. This has nothing to do with an individual. It's a collective right that as a community, we also have our own right. These are the rights that were given much by those times, were given much attention during king's times. But as of today, we are talking about collective rights that self-determination. These are the rights that were given much attention, especially when some countries were trying to fight against colonization, decolonization of our countries. Some countries wanted to be independent from their colonizers. If you are at certain communities, we wanted also to be free from certain kind of violation. So generally, those are the groups of rights, and they all relate to each other. They are all supposed to be protected and promoted at whatever cost.